Afternoon, everyone. I'm Cindy Long, and I'm the administrator of USDA's Food and Nutrition Service. It's a pleasure to be here. As some of you likely know, FNS's mission is to support nutrition security for all Americans through our 16 nutrition assistance programs. Before I talk about the topic of today's panel, which is the exciting new opportunity we have to better reach children needing summer meals, I just want to start by taking a minute to thank you for your long-standing and dedicated work to support kids and families. You know, we all understand how important it is for kids to receive the nutrition they need year-round. And I just want to say that I want to take a minute and acknowledge that I think we are at a really exciting moment for child nutrition programs in the summer and also more broadly. You know, since the pandemic, we've been seeing an increasing recognition of just how important it is to support kids with healthy meals. I was so proud at last year's White House Conference on Hunger, Nutrition, and Health that one of the key commitments that we made as an administration was to commit to finding a pathway to healthy school meals for all. Well, we're heading in the right direction. In the last year or so, we have seen 8 states set their students up for better nutrition, academic success, and no stigma by permanently authorizing free meals for all students. And more are considering actions like this. Now, beyond the school year, we all know that summer has long been a time of concern. We know that summer hunger doesn't take a vacation, to steal a phrase. Many of you have been hard at work for years to fight summer hunger through our traditional school meals program, school meals program. I really can't thank you enough for this work. The summer programs are vital because students who go hungry over the summer will struggle to be ready to learn when they get back to school in the fall. Excuse me. We also know that many of the settings that provide summer feeding have also provided critical educational and developmental programming. But I think you probably also know that we have collectively struggled to reach all the kids who depend on school meals during the year through our traditional summer program. In fact, we haven't been able to reach more than about 1 in 5 or 6 of the kids who get free or reduced price meals during the school year. That's why we are so thrilled that Congress, on a bipartisan basis, has significantly expanded our options for supporting kids in the summer. Our summer programs can now provide the traditional group meal service at central locations, a new option for grab-and-go or home-delivered meals in some rural communities, and starting next summer, we'll have a permanent program of debit cards with food benefits for eligible families to purchase groceries. It's a historic opportunity. It is a responsive, 3-pronged approach to connecting nutritious meals to more eligible kids. Using these options, we expect that up to 8 million more children in rural and remote areas across the country can be served. I know that you're going to hear from a panel of folks with great ideas and experiences for how to use these new options. I've already seen so much energy and creativity around them. You know, not long ago, I was in Fort Morgan, Colorado, at a traditional summer meal site that was operating in a child care center in a rural area. The folks who ran it noticed that there were older kids at a nearby apartment complex that they figured probably needed access to meals. So they set up a non-congregate option that would allow the kids to just come and pick up meals to take home. But they initially didn't get a lot of take-up. So to invite those kids, the staff made, along with the little kids from the child care, made invitations for the folks in the apartment building and went door to door and delivered handmade invitations to share information about the meal site. They increased awareness, and the cute little kids inviting them instantly increased participation. I was also in Searcy, Arkansas, and I was impressed by another model. There they were using a drive-up grab-and-go site where they were putting 5 days worth of meals in the car, and also asking families to fill out some basic information about who they were and who their kids were. In order to make that go more smoothly, once they filled out the initial application, they gave them a QFR code so that in the coming weeks, they just had to waive that and pick up their meals. So I know you're going to hear more about great creative ideas like these today. I know you are all going to keep serving kids with creativity, inspiration, and passion in your communities in your ongoing quest to serve kids in need. And I know that working together, we can set our students up to thrive throughout the year. So thanks so much for inviting me to speak with you briefly today. And more importantly, thank you for all you do. And so now I'm going to turn it over to our first panelist.
Thank you so much, Administrator Long. Ditto to absolutely everything you said. And thank you so much for USDA FNS's support and these new exciting opportunities. So we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Paige Picorni. I am a senior program manager with the No Kid Hungry campaign. I'm so excited to be here with you to talk about non-congregate meals. A few bits of housekeeping. The session is going to be recorded, and all of the recordings are available after the event for your viewing pleasure. Closed captioning and language translation is available, and Q&A will be at the end of the session. Please enter all questions into the chat box on your attendee hub page. And then last but not least, I want to plug the virtual lounge at 2:30 Eastern today, where I'll be available to answer even more questions, because we have a lot of great content to get through, but that means we might not have too much time for Q&A in this specific session. So see you at 2:30 in the virtual lounge. Next slide. So I would love to introduce our fantastic panelists. First, I'm going to give an overview of non-congregate summer meals in rural areas, and then you'll really hear from the experts, the program operators on the ground making it happen. So to make all of that transition seamless later on, I'm going to introduce our three panelists right now. So first we have Brianna Fleming. Brianna, or Bree, is a new and fun-loving Austinite. She moved to Austin from Dallas in 2019. Eager to explore a big city with entertainment, shopping, and good eats, she moved to Texas the day after she graduated from Indiana State University. During her time at ISU, she gained invaluable knowledge and experience that helped her mold her into the person she is today. Brianna is employed at Central Texas Food Bank as the Child Nutrition Program Manager. She is a fierce advocate for helping the underserved and diverse communities receive necessities, including nutrition, healthcare, and housing resources. She has worked in the child nutrition field for 5 years and has ample experience with both CACFP, SFSP, college hunger, school pantries, and weekend backpack programs. After Bree, we'll hear from Walter Campbell. Walter Campbell is the Executive Director of Nutrition Services for Charleston County Schools. His team serves over 50,000 students in 80 facilities covering 1,300 square miles. His team manages the second largest school district in South Carolina. Before joining Charleston County School District, he spent 23 years in the food and beverage industry and 3 years in budgeting with the federal government. Walter earned a business degree from the College of Charleston and a master's in business from Citadel. Walter has done work with No Kid Hungry, the Food Research and Action Center, the Council of Great City Schools, and the Child and Adult Care Food Program. Excuse me. He has spoken at local, state, and national conferences. His team's mantra is "Students are at the heart of our work." And last but certainly not least, we'll hear from Nancy Giddens. Nancy likes to say she became a librarian unintentionally. While working on a master's degree in education at the University of Hawaii, she took a class at the School of Library Science and was hooked. Upon completion of her degrees, she served as head librarian in the Theological Graduate School in the San Francisco Bay Area. After which, she and her family moved to Tanzania, East Africa, where she worked in a small college as the college librarian. After 34 years, they returned to the States, where Nancy joined the Calaveras County Library System, located in a small rural California county. In 2018, Nancy learned about California's Lunch at the Library program and knew it would be an important program over the summer for many families facing food insecurity across the county she serves. Okay, so as you can see, we are in for a treat today from these three panelists. But before we get there, I'm going to give a brief overview of the rural non-congregate option in the summer meals program. Next slide. And next slide. Great. So the Summer Food Service Program, fondly known as SFSP, is a federally funded, state-administered, and locally sponsored program of the USDA that allows children to access nutritious meals free of charge when school is out. Schools also have the option of serving summer meals through the SFSP or the National School Lunch Program Seamless Summer Option, or SSO. However, on the outside, to children and families, the programs basically look the same. So for both SFSP and SSO, meals are served to children 18 and under with no cost. They're completely free. There's no sign up or registration or ID required at open meal sites. Meals are served and consumed on-site unless eligible for the non-congregate, which we'll talk about today, non-congregate meal service in rural areas. So in those cases, meals can be taken off-site to be eaten. Any child can participate if the site is located in an area with more than 50% eligible of children eligible for free or reduced price school meals. And last but not least, up to 2 meals per day can be served and reimbursed in most sites. Next slide. What Administrator Long said, for the longest time, we really didn't see the needle move in summer meals participation until, as you can see on this graph, in July of 2020 and 2021, when we were dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic, and we saw a lot of flexibilities to the program to allow meals to be taken off-site, meals to be taken up by the parents or caregivers, and huge increase in participation. Unfortunately, when those flexibilities became less available in 2022, we returned back to pre-pandemic levels of participation. Next slide. So with that, we are so excited about the opportunity Administrator Long outlined, really seeing summer as a 3-pronged approach to serving children through the traditional program where meals are consumed on site, through the new rural non-congregate option, and last but not least, summer EBT, which will be coming to some states in 2024 and hopefully more and more in subsequent years. Next slide. These are the pieces of guidance. If you're a little bit like a policy wonk like me, they'll be live in the slides available after the session, but you can take a look at what the guidance for program operators looks like for summer 2023. I will note that there'll be new guidance for summer 2024 after we get the official final rule on the program by the end of the year. Next slide. So everything I'm talking about right now is based on 2023 operations. Probably a lot of it will be the same for next year, but again, understanding there will be a new rule, a final rule put out by USDA. We are waiting on final guidance for what summer 2024 will look like. So just keep that in mind when I share about kind of these nuances of the program. So who can operate non-congregate meal service in rural areas? So in states that have opted into non-congregate meal service, the site needs to be in a rural location without access to current congregate meal service, and the sponsor needs to be in good standing. Next slide. So what is rural? That's a great question. So the definition this past year was county-wide. USDA also allowed for pockets to be identified and approved. And Nook and Hungry created a summer meals eligibility map that highlighted some of these pockets that might be acceptable for a rural pocket for non-congregate implementation. So it's a great resource, and we absolutely intend to update this mapper with 2024 guidance. Next slide. What does access to a congregate site mean? Another great question. This was defined by state agency, so we saw a lot of state-by-state differences here, but in the USDA guidance, it does allow for complementary services. So think a congregate lunch is served at a program, and they're maybe able to serve a grab-and-go breakfast for the next day before children return back again for lunch. Or, for example, a congregate meal service Monday through Friday during programming, and then take home grab and go for the weekend. So that kind of complementary service was allowable in USDA guidance. Next slide. The allowable meal service models in the guidance was really similar to what we saw during the pandemic. So grab and go programs, up to 10 days worth of meals can be provided at one time. There were some state differences here on like that number. So sometimes less than 10, parent guardian pickup, and direct home delivery. And again, check with state agencies to see what was allowable in your state in 2023, because definitely saw state by state differences. Next slide. when multiple meals per day, when multiple days worth of meals were provided, USDA did allow for bulk style meals to be offered. So think, rather than unitized sandwiches, maybe a loaf of bread, package of deli meat, package of cheese, and then families could assemble sandwiches on their own to ensure freshness and tastiness of those foods. Or super popular option in states was offering bulk milk rather than 7 little pints of milk, offering a half gallon. And there's a link to the guidance there if you're curious about kind of the guidance from USDA's point of view. Next slide. And another really amazing thing I think about this rural non-congregate option is that all children can access it in areas that are area eligible, or where 50% of students are eligible for free or reduced price meals. But in non-area eligible locations, it can still be utilized so long as children are identified via free and reduced price meal application or other indication that they are eligible for those free or reduced priced meals. So you can still serve those children who are eligible for the program, even if they're not in a geographic area eligible location. Next slide. So as I've mentioned throughout kind of this intro and that overview, we saw a lot of differences from state by state. Remember that states must opt into the flexibility each year. I would say the vast majority of states did opt in last year, but we're hoping that even more opt in for summer 2024. And those other state level differences were defining access to a congregate site, whether or not home delivery or parent guardian pickup on behalf of the child was allowable, the number of days worth of meals, how many of those were allowed, and lastly, the eligibility of sponsors to operate non-congregate. So some states put different parameters, like new SFSP sponsors could not operate non-congregate. They had to have experience operating the program before. And then important 2024 guidance is not out yet. So stay tuned. We'll have a lot of resources and communications in partnership with USDA and our other national partner friends about 2024 guidance. But we are really excited to see what next year has to come after one summer of learnings. Next slide. We can kind of zoom through these a little bit. These are just resources from No Kid Hungry, and happy to share additional resources in the virtual room. But in addition to specific to non-congregate, we also have really great just general summer meals resources like this outreach toolkit with customizable assets for you to download and use. Next slide. And then of course our No Kid Hungry texting line and free meal finder map. And so excited, this past year we launched on WhatsApp. So in addition to standard SMS texting, families can find out their closest meal sites to them over WhatsApp. Next slide. And please do stay in touch, sign up for our newsletter, visit our website. That just got a beautiful new refresh, so it looks really good now. And I will have my contact information at the end of the presentation too. Next slide. All right, we're off and running. So Bree, I'd love to pass it to you to hear about you and your program.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Paige, for all that.
Please keep in mind speed for interpretation purposes. It's going on simultaneously as you all speak. The speed is making it unable for us to keep up. Please keep that in mind. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, Mark. Thank you. And thank you, Paige, for that wonderful information. So as Paige said earlier, my name is Brianna, but you may call me Bree. And although she gave an introduction of myself, I do just want to reiterate how passionate I am about this work. The entirety of my career has been in the child nutrition realm. As Paige said, I started in Dallas, Texas. I worked at City Square, which is a nonprofit that fights the causes and effects of poverty. And now I've been at the wonderful Central Texas Food Bank located in Austin, Texas since February. And as you heard, not only do I oversee the wonderful summer meals program, I also oversee after school meals, college hunger, school pantries, weekend backpacks, and much more. So we are really trying to serve as many children as possible here at Central Texas Food Bank throughout our service area. So next slide. So what is our service area? We have a pretty large service area. It's 21 counties to be exact. Our national school lunch program is actually a few more counties than 21. And so with that, taking that in account to really put this in perspective for you, our footprint is a little bit smaller than the state of West Virginia. So just alone in our 21 counties, we're serving a state's worth of meals to children and making sure that we're reaching as many children as possible, especially in those rural areas. Next slide. So I'm excited to really dig deep into what our rural summer meals programming look like. But before I do that, I want to talk about food banking. For those of you who may not be familiar with food banking, how does it work? So we have trucks, literal trucks. They can be a combination of donations or purchased items or USDA products that are delivered to the food bank here in Austin, Texas. We have a product recovery team that inspects those products just to ensure that they're still fresh and consumable for our neighbors. The product is put into inventory and our neighbors are able to shop for those products. And by neighbors, I mean our partner sites, our agencies for their neighbors. And then the agencies will either place and pick up the orders or they'll receive a delivery. And then our partner agencies provide the food to the clients in need. And how this kind of relates to our summer meals programming is sometimes we will use those USDA products or purchased goods to make our meals, which I'll talk a little bit more about in the next slide, that then our partner agencies throughout Central Texas can give to the children. Next slide. So a brief overview of our 2023 Summer Meals program. We had a total of 50 Summer Meals sites. As Paige briefly talked about, pre-COVID and during the COVID, we saw a peak in summer meals and the amount of children that needed meals and the sites that were operating summer meals, and that has decreased. But here at Central Texas Food Bank, we're eager and we're excited to get back to those large numbers that we were seeing during COVID. So that is a huge strive that we're making. So 50 was an increase from 2022, and we hope to increase again in 2024. With those 50 summer meal sites, we served a little over 75,000 meals this summer. And if you're not from Texas or you haven't spent much time in Texas, these cities are not going to sound familiar to you, but I am going to list them anyways, because these were, we had 5 non-congregate sites that operated the rural waiver, and those were 2 were located in Waco. 1 was in Bastrop, Leander, and Pflugerville. So if you're not from Texas, Waco may sound familiar, the other 3 may not. And so what's special and why I love our summer meals program here at Central Texas Food Bank, it's because we do everything in-house. So we have an on-site kitchen, a chef, a sous chef, cooks. They're incredible and they make our meals from scratch every day. We also have a garden team that produces fresh produce, whether it be lettuce, fruit, that we then use in these meals that we give to the children. And then of course we have a transportation team in our own fleet of vans that we use to deliver the meals to our partner agency so that they can then distribute the meals to our children. Next slide. So when we decided as an organization that we wanted to opt into the rural non-congregate waiver and use that within our service network, we had a really quick turnaround. It was, to be transparent, pretty much a last minute decision. So we decided to use our current network. So as you saw earlier, we have 21 counties, and within those 21 counties, we have 243 partner agencies, or I may use the term PAs. Of the 243 PAs, 162 of them are located rurally. So those are the partner agencies that we reached out to help us with this initiative. And when we started the recruitment, we were looking at those agencies of the 162 that have some type of existing infrastructure. So rather it be summer programming or community events, or they just have some type of initiative that's happening in the community that would be a good fit for rural non-congregate meals. Of course, staffing or community champions are frequent volunteers. So since we are a small team, we can't be in 50 different places at once. So we wanted to ensure that the partner agencies had someone that was enthusiastic about actually staffing and distributing the meals. Our sites had the option to choose from breakfast, lunch, or an afternoon snack, or a combination of the two. And then we also conducted a training and just on-site prep, being that it's rural and non-congregate. As you've heard now, there's lots of different ways in which the sites could serve. So we wanted to ensure that we were walking them through those ways and ensuring that it would be a good fit, not only for the partner site itself, but the children and the families that would be picking up the meals. Next slide. So of those 5 sites that we had that participated in rural non-congregate, they all distributed differently. So the one that was the most exciting to see was the door-to-door delivery. It was great to watch the children come to the door and receive their meals, and there was no transportation involved, which we know can be a barrier to receiving nutritious food and items. So that was great that we were able to implement that this summer. Grab and go, which was very popular during COVID, and those distributions were always heavily attended. So we were excited to be able to have that initiative to do grab and go. And then also we saw that some of these meals were being placed in a mobile pantry distribution or brick and mortar pantry that some of our partner agencies have currently, and they were distributing them as children were going through the pantry. So what we did not see that we're excited to see in 2024 is multi-day pickup. As Paige said, there are some state agencies that will allow sponsors to distribute as much as 10 days worth of meals, but we did not see that this year, but we're excited to do that moving into 2024. And then most of the time, children were available for the pickup. So we're excited to really put an emphasis in 2024 on the fact that parent or guardian can pick up the meals for their families. Next slide. So since I'm talking about what we're looking forward in the future, I want to continue with that and not only talk about what we're doing, but what could also be beneficial for you all if you're a sponsor and you're considering rural non-congregate in the future. Obviously, as I said earlier, we had a quick turnaround when we decided to opt into it. So we will be starting early recruitment. You look at our partner agencies, but we'll also be very strategic about the next partners that we're recruiting in the areas that we're recruiting in. We have a tool that allows us to see where the highest need for food and where our food deserts are within our 21 counties. So we'll be looking closely at that. We want to offer meal variety. That was actually one of the biggest barriers that we face with operating rural non-congregate this summer, is that if we were sending bulk pallets of food to a partner agency, most of those items were the same meals or maybe only just 1 or 2 different meals. So we're excited to explore variety and even seeing how we can have hot meals also be distributed at these sites. And I'm skipping a bullet, but I'll come back to it. But that also may mean something similar to a distribution hub or a partner working as an on-site kitchen for us to ensure that those children get those fresh hot meals like they do at our congregate sites. Multi-day distribution, as I said earlier, we did not really see any sites interested in serving multiple days of meals, but we're excited to make that known in 2024 and hopefully roll that out. And then also there may be a possibility for frozen meals, and those are obviously a lot easier to transport, to keep safe. So if we can find a way to roll that out in 2024, we definitely will. And with that, next slide. Yep, that's it. Thank you all so much.
Good afternoon. Our school district, as was said, covers 1,300 square miles, and we serve 50,000 students. And so when the possibility of a non-congregate meal service first came up, I thought this was great. And then I went to our map for Charleston County, and it said we were all urban. So then, of course, I said that's incorrect. So I went to our state agency and I requested to USDA that we have certain areas that I thought were not congregate meal settings that be considered for non-congregate meals. And they came back within about a week and approved 8 areas across our district. So it can happen. Next slide, the next 2 slides, please. Next one. But to start off, let me stop here real quick and say, we've always had a very good summer congregate meal setup. We have 10 central sites that prep meals for over 125 camps, schools, churches, etc. And the sites come and pick up the meals. And we've also do setups. You see the right picture on the right-hand side. We do setups at all of our libraries. We serve meals every day, but that's still not reaching all of our kiddos. So the ones that are not in summer camp don't go to the libraries, whose families could really benefit from non-congregate meal program. That's what we wanted to focus on. And then we also partner with our Low Country Food Bank that participates in the summer meal program. So they help reach those camps that can't make it to our 10 sites to pick up. But still, we weren't reaching all of our kids with those 10 sites. Next slide. So where do we start? So when we start the program, who's going to run the program? Because you want to give it 110%. And this is a little leadership lesson before we move on. Know your strengths and weaknesses, and you may be the one running the program. But if you just want to, put your toe in the water and get started, maybe it's one of your managers or somebody on your team. They can start with just one non-congregate site and get it going, work all the kinks out, and then move on. But just get started. The next one. So now that we knew we were going to have non-congregate this past year, what's the service going to look like? We decided to do drive-through pickup at all of our locations where they pick up once a week. And then we narrowed down the number of locations because what did end up happening is we ended up getting pretty large congregate sites at some of our schools in the approved areas that were rural areas, non-congregate. So we could see that we were serving the majority of those kids. So we didn't open up those. So we did open up, in most cases, those sites, the non-congregate sites, were within 10 miles of the other sites. So families still had the opportunity, if their children weren't in congregate programs, to drive over to these sites and pick up meals. Next slide. Okay, so the next thing that we looked at was the actual menus. And with the menus, we were using the same menu that we're using at our congregate meal service, pretty much. And this allowed us it was a win-win for our distributor, because then we would promise and commit to our distributor that we were going to not only get these products during the summer, but we're going to get them when the school year started, because you're still going to have distributors out there that are a little bit leery of bringing in new products. And so we weren't going to bring in new products. And so for example, next slide, one of the products that we brought in was kids really want a pizza during the summer, which is very difficult to transport pizza. But we found a company that actually had a packaged box pizza that could come in frozen and we could send home, and the kids could microwave it or put it in the oven. So it worked out real well. But a point here is that some of these products might be expensive. So how do you make this work from a budgetary standpoint? Is we look for additional commodities. So contact your manufacturer, your broker, and your distributor, and your state department, and see if there's any extra commodities out there. And in this case, there were extra cheese commodities to help us drive down the cost of this particular product and make us balance our budget. Next slide. So the next thing you need to consider, and again, we had folks that would drive through and pick up, the families would drive through and pick up the meal. So you can consider, well, you could deliver to their homes. If they're delivered to their homes, then yes, I would use boxes. They're easier to stack, easier to put on your bus or your van. But we were having the families come through and pick up. So we used a sturdy bag. It worked out real well. The State Department approved us for 5 breakfasts and 5 lunches per week. And so that's what we went with. Next slide. So the next thing you want to look at is, how do you communicate with the parents? How do you get that message out? So we started during the school year with the principal, and they know their families in the non-congregate areas, in these rural areas. So they did the initial contact with the families, and they put a blast out. And then we put it on our Facebook page, on Instagram, any social media we could get hold of. And we have a QR code on there, because we told the families for accountability purposes that they needed to sign up. So they simply scan the QR code on any of our postings, and it takes them right to a little survey they have to fill out. So we get the child's name, we get what school they go to, their age, and then what school the parent wants to pick up at. And then that information, we also get their email address because we want to create a community and a connection with that parent long term. And also we want to have accountability, because on that form, what it did say was that if your child is in a congregate meal site already and getting moved to a congregate meal site, that they couldn't participate in non-congregate meal site, unless of course there was another child at home. Okay, next slide. So the other thing you need to think of when you're sending these meals home is the safety of the meal. For example, if you send home a dozen oranges and the family happens to keep the dozen oranges in that bag for 5 days and then takes one out and there's a little bit of mold on it. It might have been for sitting in that bag for 5 days. You need to consider this. That's why you need to be able to have a contact with that parent. So we actually contact the parent the day before the pickup, and they pick up once a week. They contact the parent the day before they pick it up and remind them about their pickup. And then once they pick it up, we send them another email, another contact saying, hey, these are food safety issues. Now make sure your frozen stuff gets put in the freezer, your refrigerated stuff refrigerated, and your shelf stable stuff where it needs to go. But we stay on top of that and we create that, because you know what's going to happen if they see that moldy orange, and the first thing that they're going to do is put it on social media. And you want the first thing for them to do is to contact you. So we create that relationship with that parent, because in our case, we had shelf stable stuff, we had refrigerated stuff, and frozen stuff going home. Next slide. So what's new? What's coming up next? So we used a lot of prepackaged stuff last year for non-congregate, but what we tested was to have a better quality meals. And this is going back to what you just heard, having from scratch meal, is we tested with our students using this particular container. This container can actually hold meals up to 250 in a warm box. But what we did was we made the meals from scratch using commodities, then we froze it, then we thawed it out, and then we tested it in a microwave. So it'll either work in a microwave, or the child can put it out, or the parents can put it out and put it in the oven. But we want to move to a program where the kids can get a more from scratch meal. That's what we're looking at next year. And one other thing that I forgot to mention, we test all these meals with our kids starting way back in January, because what we always say here is that it's not nutrition if the kids don't eat it. So we want to make sure the kids enjoy those meals and it's something that they want to take home. All right, next slide. So one thing big to consider is you're saying, well, I can't do the program because I don't have staffing. So you only really need, again, just put your foot in the water, start out, maybe just have one key manager running the program, and then maybe you get a student involved, but just get started. We could go 2 more slides. Because what we did was, there we go. We actually got student interns, and they were awesome to help us expand our program, especially in the non-congregate area. And if you hit that point, because Walter, I just do not have the staff to make it happen, then get with your food bank or an organization in your area. But we would get with our food bank and say, hey, look, we can't make it happen, but let us help you apply so you can make it happen, because it ends up being a win-win for the kids, just so they can get meals. So if you can't make it happen, get somebody else to make it happen. Next slide. I'm going to skip over this. Go ahead, the next slide. So what are we looking at as far as some final points? One is accountability. We want the integrity of this program to be intact. And so we do a lot of cross-checking, because we have congregate and non-congregate. So we cross-reference our kids to make sure that we're not serving meals to both congregate and non-congregate to improve the integrity. When do we start? We start in January, like I said, testing all of the products that we have to make sure that the kids will like them, that they'll transport properly, and they'll transport safely. And then from a planning standpoint, we do not just the plan, but the backup plan and the what if plan. You know, what if it rains? How do we serve the families when they drive through? So having a what if plan. And finally, if there's a cost to start up, which normally there is, maybe you put tents out there, or you need cooler bags, or you need a new milk box, put milk in by the curbside. There are partners that you can go out and reach to. Like it might be grants through Blue Cross Blue Shield. It might be through the Dairy Council. It could be through No Kid Hungry, or it could be through a local parents. Once parents and organizations in your area realize what you're doing, they'll want to participate. Next slide. And just a big thank you. And if anybody ever wants to contact me through No Kid Hungry or share our strengths, please do, because we'll share everything that we have here. Thank you.
Oh, Nancy, I think you might, oh, there you go.
It's morning, so I'll say good morning from California. Next slide, please. Calaveras County Library is located in a small rural county. Next slide. You can see where it is in the state, the red one, and on the green map, you can see we're inland from San Francisco and Sacramento, a little bit north of Yosemite and east of Lake Tahoe, a beautiful place. We are small, a little over 46,000 citizens, about 1,000 square miles with varied terrain from mountain to plains. We're not very diverse demographically, however, with the majority of white. Our poverty rate is only 17%. I say only, that's high enough. But it's a bit skewed because a lot of people, retirees, come up from the Bay Area and settle in our area. But we do know that we are a high poverty area because 55% of our children qualify for school lunch. Next slide. My library system is made up of eight sites, the Central Library and 7 branches. 3 of these, the Central Library and 2 of my branches, are in very high poverty areas. Next slide. Calaveras County is most known for the Big Tree State Park, which is the home, one of the groves of the giant sequoia tree, a very beautiful trip if you want to make it. Next slide. We're also known for our wineries and the celebrated jumping frog contest that happens every year. Mark Twain wrote a story about this in 1865, so it's been going on since at least then. It's a very big deal in our county, and actually people come from all over the state to participate. Next slide. We are very happy members of the California State Library System, a library system which supports rural and poor library systems, especially with the Lunch at the Library program. Next slide. The Lunch at the Library program in California began in 2013 with 1 member of the California Library Association and 1 from the Summer Meal Coalition getting together and recognizing that children come to the library in the summer and maybe stay all day, but they have no food. So is there something we can do? With funding from the Packard Foundation, Albertsons, and the California State Library, among others, they were able that year in summer of 2013 to initiate the Lunch at the Library program in 17 public library sites and fed or served over 21,000 meals. Next slide. You might, if you don't know why this is done in a library, you might ask why. Libraries are one of the remaining trusted community services and spaces. They're highly valued by residents, particularly low income and low education residents, households, because we offer such a wonderful summer program for their children with the summer reading activities and resources. And now if we address not only the learning gaps that take place in the summer, but also food insecurity, it's just a wonderful holistic approach. Next slide. From its beginning in 2013 with 17 public library sites serving meals, in 2017 it was up to 164 with 10 times the amount of meals being served. And in 2018, the California State Library took the program over completely, and my lunch at the library journey began that year in February. Next slide. At this conference, I learned all about the needs that families have, the food insecurity of children, the big stress it causes on family to serve their children during the summer when they are accustomed to getting school lunch. But for me, my journey started when I saw this picture, and I thought to myself, if I could make a child this happy, I'm in 100%. And this picture continues to inspire me year after year. Next slide. When I went home from the conference in 2018, I tried to engage our local school district. They were unable to serve us. I tried a couple of other things. I did not succeed. 2019, I began earlier, as Walter says, began as early as I could, but I still was unable to find a food provider. Although I went to the school district, I went to churches, I went to the food bank, and even to a restaurant, but I failed again. So in 2019, in December, I invited a member of the California Library Association and the Summer Food Coalition to speak to my Board of Supervisors. And they were very excited about this opportunity. And then someone from the Summer Food Coalition suggested that I check with a neighboring school district. So I approached Amador Unified, which is our neighbor to the north, and they were happy to help us. So that year, we just planned to do it in San Andreas at the Central Library as kind of a pilot. But then COVID came, and we learned that we could do grab and go. So we decided to begin it in our two of our very most poor areas, the San Andreas area and also West Point, where also our Native American community is. So we were able to get a small grant from the California State Library that helped us with our transportation, because we have to go about 40 miles round trip to pick up the food and then deliver it. We were also able to hire someone to help with our West Point branch service, and the rest of it was done by staff and volunteers. That year, in our short school break, which it was just 29 days, we served over 2,600 meals, and we gave away 600 books and learning packets, which we had developed to help parents address the stresses that their children and families were feeling because of school closures. Next slide, please. Thank you. In 2021, the COVID protocols were still in place, so we continued. We added Mokelumne Hill and the Railroad Flat Homeschool Cooperative and served almost 4,100 lunches. In 2022, you will recall that non-congregate ended at the end of June. So up until the end of June, we served non-congregate and gave away almost 2,100 lunches. The last 3 weeks, we did congregate. And we have limited staff, we have limited site space. So in those 3 weeks, we only served 291 lunches, 700 a day compared to 100 a day. So we were, a week. So we were very concerned about this, but we still planned to continue with the program in 2023, even though we knew we were not addressing food insecurity in the way that we had with the non-congregate. We were so thrilled when at the end of March, the law changed and we were able to do grab and go again. We were also able to quickly grab a leftover California State Library grant. We hired 4 teens and 1 adult. We were able to expand to 2 more sites, and we used our new bookmobile to deliver 1 day a week to our other 3 library sites. So in 2023, I'm so thrilled to say in our small little county, we served 5,547 lunches and gave away over 1,000 books and materials. Next slide. So I'm thrilled to be able to tell my Board of Supervisors and our community that in 2023, all of our library branches served lunches to children this summer. Next slide. And of course, the huge advantage of being in a library, we were also able to offer nutrition classes and healthy snack projects for the kids to create. We have a library garden where they learned about growing healthy food. And then we have healthy living kits, which they were able to check out, that teach them to cook, and nutrition facts and other wonderful things that help them have healthy lives. Next slide. So these are the latest statistics from the California State Library from our beginning of 2,200 meals. This is how many meals were served in 2022 from 17 libraries to 171. And I think it's also wonderful to note the number of books that were given to families, over 100,000. And this is the wonderful holistic approach that Anne referred to in her talk in the introduction, that we're not only helping children with the learning gap, as we've done for decades, but also now addressing food insecurity. Next slide. The most significant challenge we've faced in 2023 was that the California state requirement was that the child must be present to receive the lunch. That was very challenging. We have some large families, and for a family to bring their 7 children to the library every day to pick up lunch was indeed a challenge. So I know this is a no registration thing, but our our human resources department requires us for all families to sign a waiver to say they won't hold the county responsible for any food problems that occur. So we do list just the child's first name and their age. There's no financial information given, but we do have this list, and these are checked every day as parents and children come to pick up the lunches. So we are hoping that something like this would suffice in California for pickup, so that we're sure that our large families and all families who cannot come every day, bring all the kids, will be able to participate. Next slide. For summer of 2024, I'm so thrilled to tell you that our state legislature has allotted $5 million annually for this program, the Lunch at the Library program. So the amount of money that we will have this year will be ongoing. And so we can make these plans and know that they're going forward. It won't any longer be a year-to-year thing. In Calaveras County, I plan to continue with our 6 daily sites and our 3 weekly sites. But we are very excited to see if we'll be able to do the more than 1 day pickup. I think this would really help with the places where we can only go once a week. And the reason for that is that it's too far. We can't get the food there in time for lunch. So if we could take them more than 1 lunch, that would certainly be a huge benefit. We'll need to increase our cold storage with this improvement and with this expansion, because now this year we're the only site that has a commercial fridge, so everyone has to bring their leftover food back to us. So we'll be able to increase that. And then I loved Walter's communication to schools. We also want to be more robust in that marketing. So we're looking forward to summer 2024, knowing that it's going to be our best year yet. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Walter. Thank you, Bree. What a fantastic presentation. As you can see, 3 totally different program operators, but really doing at the core, serving their communities and children in those communities. So huge applause to you for what you've done in 2023. So excited for what you have planned in 2024. We have time for Q&A. I was a little skeptical based on at least my length of slides. So audience, we'd love to hear from you. Please put those questions in the Q&A box and we can start answering. I saw a request for contact information for speakers. So I put all of our emails in the chat box. So please do take a look there. Okay, let's see. So there was a question about the reason for the congregate feeding requirement. So I can speak a little bit to that. To kind of go back to Civics 101, these programs are federal, which means they're written by Congress. So in that original iteration of the summer meals program, it was a requirement by Congress that meals had to be consumed on site. So it took an act of Congress in around December 2022 to offer this non-congregate option. So I think the intention of the program, I'm not in Congress's mind, but I think, that social aspect, that supervision of the meal program. But, as we saw during the pandemic, it was really truly a proof of concept of how much better the program can work for families as opposed to families working for the program, if meals can be offered grab and go, especially as you all know in rural areas where that distance to a congregate meal site was just so far. So the reasonableness of families traveling so far to have to sit there and eat a meal and then go back the next day and the next day just isn't as feasible in rural communities. So while there are huge benefits to the congregate aspect of the program, in summer camps, summer school, other educational programming where kids are there anyway, it works really, really great, but having this non-congregate option really just makes the program more and more accessible for families who can't access that. All right, another question. I will read it over. I'm very interested in how food shelves work with libraries. How did these programs start? And what would you say is the best starting point? Places to look for funding, etc. So I hear libraries. I'm going to pass it to Nancy.
Thank you. Well, I'm really fortunate because I'm in California and our state library supports this program so well. I imagine that there is funding available from other sources. We have wonderful grants that we are able to apply for every summer. We're in the process of doing that for this year. But I think Brianna and her food bank is such a wonderful resource. Ours wasn't because it doesn't function in the same way as Brianna's did, but I think food banks are a way to do this. I have known a neighboring library system did this before the Lunch at the Library System program. So I would say that churches are also usually very interested in helping with this. School districts should be, Walter's a wonderful example for me to see this because I think school districts should be very interested in that. Ours just isn't, but our neighbor is. So I could say go to a neighboring school district if your school district isn't interested. That was my salvation, and they continue to serve us wonderfully well and very, very happily. So that's all I have, I think.
Thanks, Nancy. Yeah, that finding the right partnership, right, between the site and the sponsor. I love that we have a site on here and then two sponsors to really, you have to put the puzzle pieces together. It's not one size fits all. Bree, Walter, anything you want to add?
Paige, I think you said it best. You took the words right out of my mouth. That partnership is what's most important. And even if you're acting as the partner, your sponsor will cover the meals, cover the training, and that will be provided for you. So definitely just finding the sponsors in your area.
Mm-hmm. And if you're not sure how to do that, you're actually your state agency can be a great resource. They know all of the sponsors operating in your state. And if you have struggled with that, start reaching out to folks that know might be, right? Like the school district, like the food bank. Okay. I'm going to take this one on. So the question is, what was the process for asking USDA to add additional rural designated sites to counties? Walter had discussed getting designated areas added. And is there a specific process for this request? So it is state dependent, but Walter utilized, and he can talk a little bit about his experience using the rural pocket allowance in USDA's guidance. So working really closely with your state agency, some states offered additional maps that could be used for those identifying rural pockets. Others, it was really just working one-on-one with a sponsor to determine whether or not it was rural. So Walter, do you want to talk a little bit about your experience there?
And we did look at different maps, and that's when we went to the State Department who runs our programs, and they said that they looked at the same maps and they went to USDA and determined where the pockets were, because it is the poverty. You might have $1 million homes, maybe 2 miles from, mobile homes or that are in an area that is 4th or 5th generation poverty. So we were able to reach those rural communities that way. We're very fortunate that we were approved. But just ask.
That's the first step. And your state can inform you on the process, what you might, and it might change for next year in your state. I think we are about at time. I just want to take a moment to thank Nancy Walter Bree. I also, if you have any last words, just a quick 10-second. We'll start with Nancy and then go to Walter and then go to Bree. That's the order on my screen. So Nancy, 10 seconds.
Well, I would say it's a lot of work, but it's worth every cent, every minute. You look at the picture of this child, you see that? It's worth it.
Walter?
Well, I heard this morning, and it might apply here. And looking at this child's face, is that it's lit up, and the brain does not light up with just a donut. It has to be nutritional food, and for us to be able to do that and see a face of this child light up is really important. And the other thing I heard from this morning, that food is mood. So we want our kids to be in a great mood, whether they're at home or in school. And so we want to make sure they're getting nutritious meals.
And Bree.
Yeah, so, our children that live in rural areas and rural communities typically don't have as many resources and programming and fun activities as our children that live in the city. So programs like this just really make it worth it. And I think they're worth pursuing. So please always take advantage of these programs with our rural communities.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Nancy Walter Bree. Thank you to our conference organizers. We will see you at 2:30 Eastern in the virtual room to answer more questions and have a rich discussion on rural non-congregate. But this is my contact information. This is where we sign off. I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference and have a great day.
Thank you.